Welcome to What is Numeracy? I'm Michelle Maya, Interdisciplinary Instruction Specialist with the Department of Education. And we appreciate you joining us here today. As I'm a member of the Interdisciplinary Instruction team, I just wanted you to be aware of who we are as a team. This gives you information of the members of our team, and our focus for our team's vision is to create a future where change makers are equipped with dispositions, conceptual understanding skills, and knowledge necessary to tackle global challenges. And so we're hoping that as we jump into our conversation around what is numeracy, that we can find these connections within and across content areas. Today's learning intentions and success criteria focus on creating a shared understanding of numeracy, being able to understand the difference between numeracy and mathematics, as well as identifying 3 different orientations towards numeracy. I wanted to share with you the resources that were used to do the content of this session. We're using information from numeracy across the curriculum. There's both an article and a text from Marilyn Goose and Kathy O'Sullivan. One of the things that we've developed here at the II team are these 3 pillars of integrated numeracy to support our work. The first pillar is the conceptual understanding, which is our why, the procedural fluency, which is our how, and then the real world application, which is our what. This guides our work as we go forward thinking about numeracy and mathematics and how we can best support our students in engaging with these. You should be with a copy. I'm hoping that all participants are in the slide deck. I shared the Canvas slide deck that we're using. So with this particular slide deck, you'll see that there are Post-it notes, and I would like participants to, all you have to do is kind of click on the Post-it note, and you should be able to type in there and respond to the prompt, numeracy involves. And you'll see there will be 3 slides that say numeracy involves, so there's plenty of space for people to put in their thoughts. So we'll take a few minutes while people enter in what they think numeracy involves. Please remember that if you go forward in your slide deck, you'll see that there are multiple slides set up for numeracy involves. We all don't have to be on the first slide for numeracy involves. There are a total of 3, so plenty of room for Post-it notes to add to your Post-it notes. Once you have completed working on numeracy involves, I'm gonna have you just continue through the deck. You'll see there's the next prompt, a numerate person can. So once you've completed your thoughts around numeracy involves, please go to the next set of 3 slides where it says a numerate person can. The next question prompt, so far we've got you thinking about numeracy is, a numerate person can. Our next prompt, a numerate person knows. And again, there are 3 sets of slides for this prompt as well. Our final prompt is a numerate person is. So take your time and think about what numeracy is, what a numerate person knows, what a numerate person can, and what a numerate person is. Now, I'll give you just a couple more minutes to finish up your thinking about those 4 prompts. So we're first going to take a look at that first prompt, numeracy involves. Here are some of the statements that were shared with us. Using numbers to solve real world situations, using numbers and understanding numbers in real worlds, awareness, sense, and ability to use the concept of numbers. Is there anyone who would like to unmute and talk a little bit more of their thinking of what numeracy involves? The understanding how numbers correlate with objects, assess quantity of items. We have one here that says working and understanding numbers. Would that person be willing to share what they mean by working and understanding numbers, a little more detail around that? Okay, we'll move on to our next prompt. A numerate person can understand and decipher numbers in many forms, solve problems in multiple ways. No worries, Carrie. We're glad you're still joining us. Subatize fluently, work with numbers, understand how to solve arithmetic operation for real world, estimate numbers of objects in a group, make real-time decisions based on logic. I think that is our first statement that was talking not so much focusing on numbers, but focusing on other things, the use of logical thinking and problem solving here. Our next prompt, a numerate person knows how numbers relate to one another and to use them in real world contexts. The connection between numbers can describe how numbers work and relate to one another. Which skills to use when solving numerical problems? That's really big for us. If, we may have a lot of knowledge and skills, but when do we apply specific knowledge and skills? So a numerous person has an understanding of how to do that. They know how to comprehend numbers in different situations using numbers related to their lives. Manipulate and play with numbers with critical thinking. I love these. These are great, great comments. And our final question was, a numerate person is everyone and anyone who is fluent with numbers, quick with numbers, Someone comfortable and fluent in using mathematical operations to solve daily problems. A numerate person is one who looks at numbers without fear of them. There's a lot going on in here. We're talking about fluency. We're talking about speed. We're talking about embracing mathematics as opposed to being fearful of mathematics. Someone who can use math knowledge in situations to solve problems. I love it. So based on everything that was shared on those Post-it notes, and there's more, we just grabbed a few of the comments to kind of think about this all together. In the chat, or feel free to unmute yourself, what is numeracy? Based on everything we've learned, if you were to describe to somebody what numeracy is, what might you say to them? So please drop it in the chat, or again, please feel free to unmute. We'd love to hear your voices. How about we put you in a breakout room, and in your breakout rooms, have a conversation not only about what is numeracy, but also what does numeracy involve? And how is numeracy different from mathematics? So we're going to put you in breakout rooms for, let's say about 10, 15 minutes. Have this conversation. Select one person to be a reporter from your breakout room to share your conversation around what is numeracy, what does numeracy involve, and how is numeracy different from mathematics. And so we've set up our breakout rooms by the name of your schools or your districts, and you should be able to select your breakout room. So we're going to go ahead and open up those breakout rooms for you, and we're going to give you, let's say, about 10 minutes to have those conversations, and then we'll come back together and we'll have people share. I believe we are all back together now. Is there a volunteer who would like to start first sharing what your conversation was around what is numeracy, what does numeracy involve, and how is numeracy different from mathematics?
Hi there, this is Tim from RSU 57. How are you?
Great, thank you so much for volunteering to go first.
We were having a discussion around how obviously mathematics is the ability to solve either a given problem or a given operation. For example, at the kindergarten level, mathematics might be being able to add in one-to-one correspondence to 10 by the end of the year or something along those lines. But numeracy is taking that knowledge and being able to expand on it or come up with either multiple ways to do things or different ways to solve a problem once you have that skill set, and perhaps then defining what of those ways that you can do it, what's the most efficient solution as you grow. And it kind of led to a conversation around just a question as simple as how many ways can you make the number 10? And so not asking a specific operation of 5 + 5 or 7 + 3, but one child may just have how many ways can you make a number 10, and they may simply just write the number of 10. And that's their level of kind of numeracy, where another child might be, they could come up with 5 plus 5 and 7 plus 3. And you might have another child that says, well, what about 3 numbers? And they're thinking at a whole different level of kind of understanding and application of a skill. And then we kind of went as far as you could actually ask a 3rd-year graduate math student how many ways you could make a number 10. And their level of numeracy and their ability to come up with different ways to do that and an in-depth understanding is at a whole completely different level. So we kind of led to that conversation of how teaching numeracy is so important at every single level so that it can continue to grow as students or adults or whoever just moves up in their learning.
Oh, I love it. That's like this continuum along that numeracy and that flexibility and understanding. Great conversation. Thank you. Is there another group who would like to share how their conversations were in their breakout room around what is numeracy? What does numeracy involve? How is numeracy different from mathematics?
Hi, Becca Jordan from Holden here. We got into a talk, we're 4th grade here, and we got into a talk with our 2nd grade with about how numeracy is concepts and words and all of it together. It's not just numbers. That's where our conversation kind of went.
Oh, so numeracy is bigger than just numbers.
Yeah.
I love it. Our next group, do we have a next group who would like to share their thinking? How about your group, Danielle, from Surrey?
The start of this conversation has already gotten off to a really interesting discussion in listening to those different things. I'm sorry, I can't remember the first group. Maybe it was Tim's.
Yes, it was.
Anyway,
257.
Yeah, exactly. So I just saw the documentary film, and I'm not going to go into it, of Count It Out. And immediately, the only thing I'm going to share right now, because I could talk on and on, is that it was interesting, Tim, the bringing up the decomposition of a sum, 10, 7 and 3, or 5 and 5, or whatever, into 3 numbers, and then, graduate students taking it even further. But there's not that like numeracy for me is this kind of language of expression. And I think mathematics, I'm just guessing here because I don't really have a math background except for being a super nerd and playing piano and looking at piano like fractions and things like that, or dancing because I could understand physics and different, things like that. But a numeracy for me is someone who can, you just kind of like live with numbers, and you see numbers and things, and you see patterns in nature, and you kind of appreciate that kind of weaving pattern in and out of our lives. And I don't actually really know per se what the technical definition of mathematics is. But I would say mathematics is just a specific channeling of numeracy into studies per se. And someone I hope builds on this and educates me a little bit more. But numeracy is that ability to just see numbers almost in everything that is around you. So that kind of curiosity. Anyway, thanks.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing.
Sure.
You know, all these different lenses and views will help us get a better understanding of what numeracy and mathematics is. So I appreciate that. How about Brewer? I don't think we've heard from Brewer yet.
Hi, we talked about numeracy being choosing which math tool you have accurately for what you're trying to do. And we talked a little bit about, do we give students too many tools to choose from, especially when they're younger, that confuses them and makes it harder for them to select? I know sometimes it's a new strategy every day, and is that overwhelming?
Okay, thank you. And I see in the chat, Allison is, Dodge is saying they're having difficulty with sound, so they're going to type their answer into the chat for us. So that will be great. So we talked about how numeracy is different from mathematics in that numeracy is number sense and awareness. It's more how numbers are used in daily life. Mathematics involves specific operations and uses problem solving and very specific skills. Thank you so much for sharing. Is there anyone that we have missed in the share out? So I wanted to share with you, we have a Maine State Numeracy Action Plan that has just recently been released. And in the introduction of this plan, we state numeracy is more than performing calculations. It is the ability to make sense of the world through mathematical thinking. It empowers learners to reason, solve problems, and make informed decisions. So when we go forward, the numeracy committees that have been working together over a period of time here developing our state numeracy action plan also put a lot of time and energy in thinking about numeracy versus mathematics. Just as we think about literacy versus reading, right? Reading is a component of literacy, but there are other parts that play. Just as with numeracy, it is about those discrete skills, but there are other components that create this sense of numeracy and being a numerate person. So I want us to consider, and this comes from the article that I shared that I was using to help develop this research, this continuum of contemporary meanings of numeracy. So we think about procedural numeracy. This is those basic mathematical knowledge and skills. When we think about functional numeracy, this is your personal, social, economic well-being, having national productivity and competitiveness. In these two categories of procedural numeracy and functional numeracy, get into this bucket of numeracy as a technical skill, right? Going back to those basics, add, subtract, multiply, divide. Functional numeracy, applying it to solve problems, things like that. Contextual numeracy is with an intelligent citizenship, participation in community and civic life, that I'm taking information and using it to help make decisions, to support my community, to make decisions in my everyday life. And then critical numeracy is social, political, transformative, understanding and challenging injustice. And so I may take information and use that knowledge to change policies that we see may not be accurate. Change funding formulas and things like that so that it serves the better good. And so this is numeracy as a social practice. So I want you to just kind of take a few minutes and think about this different way of considering numeracy through this continuum, where you have procedural, functional, contextual, and critical numeracy. And if you are access to this slide deck, you should be able to respond to this poll. Just by clicking on your choice, you can only select one. It's going to make it difficult for you to choose just one. But where in this continuum do you think instruction falls most of the time? And yeah, you can move that around so you can read them. But as you move it, just please notice that you're moving it for everybody else too. And so select one of those things that where you think instruction falls most of the time. So I'm seeing right now we have about 10 votes. We'll leave the poll open for just another minute or so. So please make your selections. So I think I have to get out of the presentation mode to reveal the results of the vote. Fails most of the time. See if you can go in and change your vote, Danielle. See if you can go in and do that before I take a look at the results.
I did. Thank you, Michelle.
Oh, no problems, but I can see how that can happen. It is a Friday after all from a very long week, right?
Oof. Yep. Thank you.
My pleasure. So let me escape out of, if it will let me. Okay. And now, let me see, yes, the responses. Are you seeing my screen still with the responses? And 100% are saying that we fall in the procedural, that our instruction is falling in the procedural continuum. So let me see if I can't get back into my present mode. So when we think about this continuum and we see that all of our 13 votes fell in procedural numeracy, what does that get us to think about? What are your thoughts on this continuum and thinking about numeracy this way? Anyone like to unmute and share, having thought about, and I'm going to go back to the previous screen so we can see the continuum clearly. When we think about this continuum and instruction, do we think there are opportunities in these other areas that we can bring into our curriculum? What are your thoughts about that? is there a need to go further into other continuums? I see some heads shaking like, ooh, I think so.
I'm just going to jump in here.
Mhm.
But again, this documentary pointed out that it's one thing to be like, okay, I know 2 + 2, or I could pass a basic math or something like that. But then you're talking about different things that affect our lives, like for instance, you know, gerrymandering, or providing a statistic that has not been researched. And one of the interviewees was one of the researchers for the Wall Street Journal. And there was her and another person, and they were trying to keep up with the data that was coming out about jobs, or anything, the stock market. And it's like, even I'm like, hey, I'm a math nerd, but I look at the word stock market and then all these percentages, and I'm like, wait a minute, I'm a math nerd and I'm frightened because I don't really understand what the numbers mean. So who do those numbers affect? Are they affecting me in the middle class? Are they affecting the lower class? Are they affecting, and so it's the understanding behind those numbers. When I think of numeracy as a social practice and challenging injustice, I think that's why I put that first, because I was like, where does it fail? Yeah, we fail because our kids are only, this much educated, and then being affected by this much. And like, okay, so how can we change that for future generations as math teachers and math educators, to provide for them more education on things that actually affect them every day, instead of just functional. Everybody doesn't work with cash now, you work with a card. So when I'm talking to my students about making change, they're like, why does this matter? I go and I pay with a card. And I'm like, well, it matters because you've got a bank account. And so are they robbing you? And then they look at me and they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, I used to have to make change in my head. When I had cash, when I was younger, I knew how to make change very quickly. And then I've gotten lazy, with our
Yep.
everything digital. But I think I think it's pretty critical. And I want to stop talking and hear from other people. Anyway.
Oh, great. So we have in the chat, Danielle, they say your thoughts are interesting. And I agree, this is great. And then they also put in that, this whole thought here around this continuum is interesting. The only example of critical numeracy our group could call to mind is a lesson in 8th grade algebra from the Desmos curriculum. It is about exponents and how to relate the highest level of global wealth to average salaries in regular people. And then regarding functional numeracy, we are thinking of personal finance, getting students to be grown up and think about understanding money. And so we see where these different components of this continuum play out in our real life. And we're finding that our instruction is falling more in that procedural and sometimes going into functional. And so just food for thought and things to think about. So the next thing that I wanted to share was this concept around these orientations. And this information comes from that book, Numeracy Across the Curriculum. And there are these 3 orientations that we talk about. And there's a separatist, a theme maker, and an embedder. And so I want us to think about, how do we view the role and responsibility of numeracy instruction? So the separatist is the individual that recognizes that mathematical skills are important, but they believe that the teaching those skills are the responsibility of the math teacher. Okay? So they're important. This is great, but that belongs with the math teacher. The theme maker recognizes links between mathematics and other content areas, real world applications, and they develop units of studies that integrate mathematics with other content areas based on a theme. So we might be doing a financial literacy project where the students have to go get a job and they have to figure out their monthly expenses, how much money do they have to make to afford their apartment, their card, things like that. So that would fall kind of like underneath the theme possibly. And we might be doing this in social studies class or something else, okay? The embedder sees the mathematical elements within their own content areas. And they believe all teachers are teachers of numeracy and mathematics within their own content areas. They believe that you do not need to be a mathematician to be a teacher of numeracy. They understand the importance of numeracy to support that deeper understanding of their own content area and the connection it has for students to have a greater command of their content area and how these things apply within and across content areas. So we're going to put you back in your breakout rooms, and you will see that there are several slides here with post-it notes. This first one is for the separatists. What are some examples of these orientations in your classroom? So I gave you a couple when I was talking, but I want you in your groups to think about a separatist point of view. Then the next one in green would be the theme maker. And then from there, the final one would be the embedder. And so what are some examples of these different orientations in classrooms that you have seen or that you would like to see? So we're going to be opening up our breakout rooms. And this time we're going to let them go for, let's say, about 15 to 20 minutes to really give you an opportunity to think about these different orientations and what these examples may look like in your classroom. We're not saying one orientation is better than the other. We're just interested in getting what you think some examples of each of these orientations may look like and sound like in your classrooms. All of our breakout rooms are closed. We're so happy to have you join us back in the main room. As always, I like to start with anyone who wants to share some of the conversations that happened in your breakout room. We can look on our post-it notes and see some of the things that people have shared. Is there a volunteer who would like to share some of the conversations?
I'll volunteer.
Great, Jenna.
We talked with our group. We're at RSU 63. We talked about how for the first sticky note, math is at a set time of day and does not connect to other subject matter, is what we got out of that piece.
Mm-hmm.
For the second part, we talked about incorporating math into science and social studies with units like money and data collection are types of things that we use. At least I teach second grade, and that's very common. And our last part was having teachers teach multiple subjects and making references to other content areas.
Oh, I love it. So you're seeing evidence of all three of these orientations happening in your classrooms.
Yes.
Great. Because remember, we said it's not one is better than the other. It's about an opportunity for all of these orientations. Is there another group that would like to share some of the conversations that they had in their breakout room?
Hi, we'll share.
Great, thank you, Brooke.
We're from Hamden and RSU 22. There's just two of us here.
Excellent.
So we were just like looking at all three, we felt like just based on, we're both lower grade level and it does kind of feel like math is a little siloed at that point. And that the curriculum doesn't necessarily allow for the flexibility to kind of expand it or add in the thematic opportunities to try to bring math into other areas.
Okay.
That's my
So
share.
yeah, we have to think about those limitations that we have to work within as well, right? And so again, we're going back to one is not better than the other. It's just being aware of these different opportunities, these different orientations, and where can we find some room where we can weave in and out so that there's more opportunities of engagement for our students. So thank you for sharing that. Is there another group who would like to share some of the conversations that took on in their meeting rooms?
I'll go ahead. Hey, and I would ask that Lisa and Caitlin to also unmute because they spoke very eloquently about their day being so scheduled and such a block period. Lisa, why don't you, where are you? Lisa and Caitlin. Yeah, there you go. Lisa, speak up.
Yeah, no, we just talked about how our day is so structured and time frame that with everything, everybody coming in at certain times, going out at certain times, that we have certain time frames that we have to follow. And that we also talked about our curriculum is set up to be like a standalone that, I mean, I talked about being in this for 30 years and how it used to be embedded. Everything was embedded with things. So it's like I've taught kindergarten and first grade, and I'm back to teaching kindergarten. And it's so different from when I used to teach kindergarten that, for example, when we were learning about counting or, one curriculum that we used to do investigations. And it came to like, you could create a grocery store and the kids could make a list of what they wanted to shop for. Like you'd have a grocery store set up in your classroom and you'd have a list and they could make a list of like, I want an apple, an orange or whatever. So you embedded the writing and the reading and the literacy piece to it. And then you might have so they had so much money that they could go and spend, and then they had to go pick at the grocery store, and then they had the cashier that would add everything. It's like, you don't have that time to do that anymore, but it's like the kids were engaged when you were able to do that. And I feel like the curriculums now that we use, you don't have that engagement from everybody. It's just, it made it fun and exciting. And now it's more structured of this is what we do, and then this is what we do, and then this is, and we lose that engagement is what I am feeling. And there's not time to do that embedding of everything because of our block scheduling and how much time we have.
Thank you for sharing. And I think that's something, it's not just in your district, right? I think this is something that we see not only just in Maine, but nationally as well, right? And so thinking about numeracy and how we can find these hidden opportunities, right? And bring them to life for our students. Was there others? Go ahead, Lisa.
We have an excellent program here. We have an Aspire program that we have the opportunity and the funds to get those things and get that embedded in the engagement, but it's like finding the time and being able to still allow it. A lot of restructuring needs to be done so we can do that.
Yeah. Yep. Perfect. Was there another person in your room, Danielle, that you wanted to have them share their thinking, or?
Caitlin, if you wanted to.
Caitlin's with my district. We're the same district.
Okay, perfect.
Hey, we are the same district, but just to echo, we did have a pretty powerful conversation about structuring and how we're a pretty large school, and but I think I think we're very dependent on following the schedule, and there's not a whole lot of flexibility there because you've got so many paraprofessionals and special ed teams and Title I teams coming in, and it's like a revolving door in most of our classrooms. So they structured the gen ed classrooms to reflect and work around those schedules, and it's really hard to move into a themed program and do those things that bring joy and engagement and participation to our students and our staff too, when we're so structured. The flexibility is just not there.
Mhm.
I think we've got a wonderful staff here that would be more than willing to do more of that, but we are really limited in what we're able to do because of either the programs that we've been given or the structure of our day, because if you change one thing, it's like a domino effect, right? Or the trickle down effect. So there's a lot of moving parts, and the flexibility is just doesn't seem to be there. And our group, we were talking about it, but we don't know what the right answer is or how to solve it. But we know that we would like to do more of the themed things, but right now our group really feels like we're just separatist all around.
Well,
That's all.
thank you for sharing. Thank you. And there are limitations that we have to fall within, but having conversations and starting to think of ways and opportunities. And like we said, one way isn't better than the other, so to speak. And it's just this awareness of what within our limitations we may be able to do for some small changes that might have an impact and make a change. So thank you. There is it's much bigger than just saying, I want to do this. There are so many moving parts to doing some changes that one thing does do that ripple effect and impacts others. And so being thoughtful and having conversations and starting down that path of just opening that door for conversations is a huge step in itself. Anyone else like to share conversations that happened in their breakout room around these orientations? As I went through and looked at these, there are some very common, let me go back here, right here. When we think about examples of separatist, right? I'm thinking for me, that was the easiest one to fill out, right? Because we see that, we've lived that, that's how I was educated. That math was with the math teacher only. When we look at the themes, Apple Day and Pumpkin Day, these are common themes that we hear about frequently that happen and take place. And then when we look here for the embedder is the multiple teachers teaching multiple content areas and weaving things together. And so again, I just want to reiterate that we're not saying that one of these orientations is better than the other. We just want to have this awareness of these different orientations and realize that we have some opportunities to weave in and out of these orientations for what fits best for our curriculum, for our structured classroom, our schedules, and do what we can. There was a question in the chat box That said, we love the collecting leaves example. What grade level, Melissa?
You're on.
All right. I teach pre-K and we use pre-K for me, and math is embedded through our entire program. So that was just an example.
I love it. Thank you. And then let's see, there's something else. Oops, my mouse, I've got it going backwards. Alyssa shares with us, I remember trying this in the 90s, and it was very hard to find planning time for teachers from separate disciplines to work together and build and blend the materials. Perhaps it might be different in the digital age and with a prepared curriculum now, but cobbling it on our own back then was not at all easy. And you're right, that is a huge lift to take on. When I was back in the classroom, when I was at the middle school level, we were a team of 4 teachers, each teaching our own content area. And we had common planning time as a team where we could come together and develop these thematic units that we could weave into our curriculum because we shared the same students. We had that common planning time and we could make these connections. And so that made it, easier for us to work on those thematic units. And so, you know, again, that goes back to the culture and the structure in your district, in your classrooms, what you have available for resources. And so, you know, as I keep reiterating, it's not about one being better than the other. It's about being aware of them and finding opportunities to weave these in and out, so that we offer those opportunities for our students. As some of you shared, there seems to be more engagements either through that theme or the embedded than in the separatist. But even as a separatist, we can make our instruction and our activities with our students very engaging at times as well. And so we don't want to lose thought of that. So thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. So the next slide I want to share with you, it's called Why I. And you might be wondering, what is I? So I is what we call ourselves, we're the I team, interdisciplinary instruction. And again, we're not saying one approach to instruction is better than the other. There are times where it is important to do discrete content specific instruction to work on those discrete skills. And so when we think about being the siloed instruction where we stay in our lane, we can go deeper focusing on just that one discipline or content area, that we can cover more content, right? We all have that list that we have to get through this by the end of the year, and that is always weighing on us. That a lot of it may be teacher-centered during this approach, but there's also opportunities for student-centered during this approach as well. And it's easier to grade and define boundaries because of the simplicity of it being focused on just this one discrete area. And we can, you know, show mastery of learning and, you know, that checklist. When we talk about interdisciplinary instruction, we get to support a deeper understanding, and we're focusing more around these concepts. And this is where we have that opportunity for students to transfer the learning within and across content areas, seeing where these concepts from the different content areas intersect, intertwine, and support each other to deepen their learning. It increases engagement and reduces reteaching. If we're using real world tasks, it's relevant to the students and they really want to understand and know why this might be happening. It gives authenticity. Teachers model and inquire in collaboration. They work together to build the units. Also, it can be student inquiry based, where the students have a topic where they're going to dig deep into that crosses multiple content areas in order to solve the problem that they've come up to. The assessment is going to mirror more of real world problem solving for the students. And then those conceptual connections are going to support that long-term retention so that when they come across problems that they haven't seen before, they can reach back into those frameworks of seeing, well, I had something similar, maybe this will try, because of that authenticity of the problem solving that they've done. And again, we want to stress that we're not saying one approach to instruction is better than the other. There's opportunities and there are areas where you do have to do that discrete learning. And then there's opportunities where that interdisciplinary approach will work as well. And so being flexible and have that opportunity to go back and forth between these things is really important. Thoughts around this graphic that I'm sharing with you? Questions that you may have around what is numeracy, about the orientations? So this next slide is a little bit of a teaser for you. And so this is something we work together where we can support educators in identifying numeracy opportunities and demands within your current lessons and units of studies, where we talk about first identifying our conceptual understandings, identifying the grade span so the work is appropriate for the students, how you shape that task based on the identified conceptual understandings, looking into the numeracy opportunities and then the numeracy demands and how we can support engagement. And I'm calling this a teaser because in this afternoon's session, problem-based learning and numeracy, we're going to dig deep into this guide and we're going to do some work around that. Okay. And so we're going to take this step by step this afternoon and really dig into what do we mean by identifying conceptual understanding and kind of take you through that process and offer an opportunity for you to work with an existing lesson or unit yourself to see if you can identify numeracy opportunity and demands regardless of your content area. Right? This can be used across all content areas to help you see that. I also wanted to share with you, and this link should work on the slide, we have launched our Maine DOE Numeracy Hub. And let me see if I click on that, if it will open it up for you and share. And so the Numeracy Hub is here as a resource to provide supports for teachers. There's a link to our numeracy action plan right here on the webpage. So if you want to see where our focus and priorities are falling, please feel free to take a look at that. We have here some supports around what we call the architecture of numeracy, and then numeracy in action. This is going to be continually evolving. We will be updating and adding new resources. After a while, we'll take some of these down and archive them on a separate web page so you never lose the resource, but we can keep things current and moving. We also have resources for professional learning for you as well on the hub. And then here's information about mathematics standards and our state assessment and what you need to know about that. And so we wanted to share this. This has just recently been published, and we wanted you guys to be aware that this is here. And this is our team at the department, the interdisciplinary instruction team. You can find this on our webpage under the contact, but reach out to any of us with any questions that you have. We're more than happy to work with you and help support you as you go through your journey of engaging students and supporting student learning. And as always, you can find the Maine Department of Education online. And we really hope that this session was what you expected and that you walk away learning something new that is useful and relevant to the work that you have going forward. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And just again, thank you all for taking time out of your day to spend time with us on this journey of learning around numeracy.